Our next speaker is Dr. Joel Strom, founder and chair of Doc Squads. Dr. Strom is a practicing dentist in Beverly Hills, California. He's the founder and chair of the Doc Squad Project, a national program that recruits, trains, and deploys physicians into the public policy and political arena. Winning the political game takes more than ideas or policies. It takes being able to articulate those ideas in a way that answers the hopes and the fears of voters. The best messengers to educate voters on healthcare are doctors, which is what led Dr. Strom to build the Doc Squad program. He has authored a book, Learn to Lead, Finding Success as a Grassroots Political Leader.
Thank you for inviting me here to speak with you today. I appreciate the creativity of the meeting, and thanks to the organizers for doing such a great job. I want to talk about what should docs do politically in 2016. What tangible avenues can we take to make a difference in the coming election cycle? During the past few years, I've had a good fortune to work with so many of you, write op-eds together, go to meetings, get training, all those types of things, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the time you spent, the critiques you've given me, and your friendship, so thank you very much for that. But many of you don't know me, and I want to spend just a minute telling you a little bit about myself. On the professional side of things, I've been a practicing general dentist for 35 years, or maybe a little bit more, and I've been really fortunate to have the opportunities to be part of many of the facets of my profession. After dental school, I was an NIH postdoctoral fellow at Columbia University, where I had my first taste of Washington, D.C., and went there and spoke with congressmen for the first time in my life and talked about healthcare reform. And with that experience, I came back to California, and I wanted to be involved in dental politics. So I joined the Western Los Angeles Dental Society, and I chaired the legislative committee for quite a long time, lobbying for issues of concern to dentists and the private practice of dentistry. And that led to the California Dental Association experience on the Council of Legislation and the American Dental Association as a delegate and as a chair of a conference committee. So I've had a lot of experience also in the professional, organizational part of my profession. Then I was also lucky to be appointed by Governor Wilson to the State Dental Board, where I learned so much about regulations and statutes and lobbying, really formed the underpinnings for me to understand what the ACA would do, how it impacts us as private practicing clinicians. And lastly, I've also been involved in the educational arm of dentistry, serving as the Director of Ethics for USC Dental School for 5 years, and really enjoyed my experience interfacing with students. So I feel very fortunate to have been active in my profession. I've learned a lot about it. So on that side of the equation, it's been a wonderful life, a good professional choice for me. But it was really in politics that I found my passion. And I've held numerous levels of leadership positions for the past, let's say, 15 years or so. They're listed here. Some of them are listed right in front of you. But I compiled most of my stories and lessons learned into this book called Learn to Lead, Finding Success as a Grassroots Political Leader. And you can get it on Amazon. I'm not trying to hawk a book. I just found that when I would send out free copies to people, it cost me more to buy the copy and mail it. So it's faster and cheaper, actually. If you want to learn more about that, go ahead on Amazon, and it's $5. So that's fine. But I've had a long career in grassroots political leadership, and I've learned quite a bit and made a lot of good friends. And I highly recommend that you continue doing what you're doing in the world of politics. So it was after all these years that I thought about it in 2008, 9, that time, and I said, you know, what should I do with the rest of my political life? And I decided that I should use my experience on the healthcare side, the research side, in politics and media to put that all together and figure out ways to have a more meaningful impact in the world by utilizing my background in these 3 areas. So that's how I got here today. And enough about me, let's talk about us and things that we can do in the future. I think we all share the goal of providing greater leadership and influence in the upcoming campaign season. We have a unique ability to talk about healthcare issues with patients who are voters and voters. We have a unique megaphone here, if you will, for us if we decide to use it, if we can use it properly and learn how to really have its greatest impact. So I know we have that opportunity. But the issue is going to be, what can we do in a short period of time to rise up the ladder, to talk to people about who we are, what we believe in a way that makes a difference. Where are we going to go? And my feeling is that we should look to inside the Beltway, folks. And I know that for many years, as doctors, as conservatives, we've been very disappointed in the inside the Beltway crowd. And that's quite understandable. Last time we went to D.C., about 30 of us were in D.C. on a great trip. But when we went to lobby in the halls of Congress, we were sitting there, 30 of us in different places. And everywhere we went, there was a whole slew of pharmacists in white coats with a logo on their white coat. And I don't know how many hundreds were there, but there were many hundreds of pharmacists there, really organized, lobbying their butts off to accomplish some goal they had in mind. And it just brought to mind that, we just can't mount that type of offensive without the backing of major organizations like they have. So I see two major avenues, largely inside the Beltway, that I believe we should access and utilize to take our message to the voters. The first umbrella, let's say, avenue are the presidential candidates and their campaigns. As you know, they're all over the place, right? The media is focused so much on the presidential primaries. It gives us an opportunity to utilize those groups to get our message out. The second one is the Republican National Committee. And I know I'm going to hear a lot of sneering in the background. I have shared that feeling with you for many years, but I'm going to explain later why I think we need to take advantage of that organization. So these are the two organizations, the two avenues that's going to dwarf all the other things we could possibly do. They're going to have greater voter contact, greater media influence. And I think we can magnify our message and make it more effective if we can utilize those two organizations. So I've chosen to go the 501c4 route to gain access into these two groups of influential people, the presidential campaigns and the Republican National Committee. Our nonprofit is called the Dr. Joseph Warren Institute, named after founding father Dr. Joseph Warren. Dr. Warren left his medical practice to fight in the Revolutionary War against the British, and he died early in the war. And so I thought, what a great name. In fact, it was Dr. Richard Armstrong who suggested that name for our nonprofit. The overriding goal of the nonprofit is to educate and empower doctors to become more active player in the world of politics. So we have formed that group, and our flagship program is called Doc Squads. So what is Doc Squads? Well, Doc Squads is an organization that we use to recruit, to train, organize, and deploy doctors into the field of play, so to speak, on public policy regarding healthcare. Originally, it was an all-volunteer army. We spent our own money, time, and effort to build that. But middle of last year, we received an unsolicited offer to fund us from a large DC funding source, and that money allowed us to hire a professional writer, professional communications person, an executive director, the attorney, and the accountant necessary to make it all legally done properly. And it's really allowed us to fulfill some dreams that we've had. And we're not tied to any other group. We don't campaign for any candidates. So that's briefly what we're involved with. If you want to look at it another way, since we're out here on the West Coast, right around Hollywood, we're like a Hollywood talent agency for doctors. When you go to the movies, you see an actor. You don't see the talent agency. When you go to a concert, you see the singer. You don't see the talent agency. We're the same way with healthcare, with doctors. Our goal is to put doctors on the map and get them inserted into different opportunities to share their views on healthcare reform. So Doc Squads is behind the scene. You don't really hear about it. You don't see our name underneath doctors when they appear on television or hear them on radio. We believe that because doctors have the highest public trust, especially when it comes to healthcare, we wanted to do it that way intentionally, because we think the best messengers, the best physician messengers are those that are not overtly political or partisan. Once you become somewhat political or partisan, you begin to lose some of that credibility because you're seen more of as a politician and less as a doctor. Dr. Ben Carson comes to mind in terms of him running for president. He now obviously has a different view, or he's viewed differently by more people now that he's a politician. So we try to keep that political, overtly political and partisan side way in the background and help our doctors get to those persuadable voters that might come our way in the election, the voters that are going to decide the election. We're united by three basic principles: strengthening the doctor-patient relationship, less third-party involvement, and patient choice. Are there other issues we agree on? Yeah, 90% of us agree on certain issues, but we wanted to pick just three overriding issues so that we could really get as many doctors under our tent and umbrella as possible without causing any friction and strife amongst the group. And it's really worked out pretty darn well. So those are the three principles. If you agree with those principles, you're welcome to get involved with us. Our team footprint is like this. At some point in time during the past 4 years, we have had at least one doctor in all of these states. Sometimes, most of the time there's more than one doctor, but at least one doctor in those states. Our funding source wanted us to focus on specific states, so our teams in certain states are stronger than in other states by design, and that was getting involved in states that had very important Senate races or congressional races in the last election cycle. Doc Squads has reached quite a few voters. It's estimated that we've reached about 15 million voters and have really, when you look at the return on investment, so to speak, for donors, we think we've generated about $2.5 million in media, in earned media. And these are some of the papers and stations we've appeared on. So we feel we have done a very good job in reaching out and hitting the voters. Our primary goal for 2015 and 16 is to expand into states where there's going to be very important Senate races or where the states are going to be swing states in the upcoming election, where we haven't had doctors to date. Because of our increased influence inside the Beltway and our continuing influence inside the Beltway and growth, we've actually been asked by a variety of groups to actually go out and help promote the cause. So we're hoping that things have turned around now, and instead of us going and banging on doors, they're coming to us and banging on our doors to find doctor spokespersons for different causes. As far as our strategies for the next year, we decided last year to do these 4 major pushes. And we have a leadership team of about 5 doctors that meet occasionally to discuss these things, but we do have phone calls quite often nationally to discuss these strategies. And the 4 we came up with starting last year was 1, to create a super PAC, 2 was to help doctors get involved in presidential primary campaigns, and that includes senatorial campaigns, because senatorial campaigns of incumbents, especially those who don't have primary opponents, are going on right now as well. The 3rd one was to help doctors get involved in messaging for like-minded Republicans, and I use the RNC as the example here. And lastly, which we don't have time to talk about today, maybe next time, is to utilize doctors in the presidential campaign, which is a topic for another day. So let's look at each of these strategies. Number 1, Super PAC. We formed a PAC called Our Patients, Our Voice PAC. It's run by Brent Lauder through his company, but basically the input comes all from doctors. We were able to raise $50,000 last year. We made cut 5 radio ads that played in congressional districts that were barely won by the Democrats. The districts were in Texas, New York, California, Florida, and Arizona. They were all recorded by a doctor doctors in each state went on and did these ads for us and for themselves. And we cut a television ad basically focusing on Jonathan Gruber, tying him to Hillary Clinton, and we played those in Iowa and New Hampshire, and for obvious reasons. So we let the world know that there's a PAC out there that's run by doctors and that is administered by doctors, and where doctors appear in the ads, and that we're going to be here in the next election cycle. And we were noticed by Politico and NBC News and Fox News and those. So we feel good about that goal, and that we're on our way to accomplishing that goal. Strategy number 2, involve doctors in primary campaigns. We've had about 9 doctors who have asked for us to help them get involved in primary campaigns as individuals, again, not as representatives of doc squads or anybody else. So we've been pretty successful. We have 8 placed, with 1 who is still kind of looking. That was not his fault at all. It was the campaign staff that has failed to get back in touch with us. But 8 out of 9 is a pretty good batting average. Now, why would you want to get involved in a primary campaign? Well, the number one reason is because you believe one candidate is much better than the other candidates. Okay, you might like the other candidates, but you believe that one of these people is your guy or your gal, and you want to help them get elected. So aside from getting them elected, if you're fortunate enough to help them and they get elected, why would you do this? Because, out of the 15 or 16, only one's going to win. Well, number 1, you want to increase your personal influence in a campaign, because then they trust you down the road. When you get to the general election, should your person win, they're going to trust you. They know you were there for the cause, even more so than your profession in their mind. You're there because you care about that candidate. You can also increase your organization's influence with that candidate, that campaign, and all the people involved in it. So I know that if you're a member of AAPS, for example, when you go to work for, let's say, Scott Walker and his campaign is going to know about AAPS. So the third reason to do that. And then, of course, if your candidate wins, you're going to bring along all your friends. So it's a great way to be involved in the political process, providing you really like that front runner. Now remember, you got to figure they want something from you, right? Now what do they want from you? Well, let me be honest about it. They're going to want money. They're going to want you to donate, and they're going to want you to help find other doctors to donate. And that's really what they're interested in right now, is money. There will be a time down the road where they're going to want you to get other endorsements, give them policy advice, help to recruit doctors, form a coalition, do speaking. That will come down the road. But right now it's pretty much money. So don't be offended if they ask you for that, and don't feel constrained that you have to do that. But certainly it's one way of getting going quickly. What can you learn from doing this? You can learn a lot. You can learn a lot. Okay? Is the campaign professionally run? Does the campaign have legs? You're going to get a residency or internship, if you will, in real life presidential politics. And there's no better way to do it. You know, as doctors, you can't learn how to do surgery by reading a book or by attending a lecture. You have to do it. Well, this is a great way to do it, to be involved in an official campaign and learn the ropes firsthand. It'll tell you whether you want to do this in the future. Do you want to be a volunteer chairman next time? Do you want to be involved at a different level, or you don't want to be involved? And lastly, maybe some of you will say, I can do this myself. Why not do it myself? So you learn a lot. You should definitely consider doing this, and we're happy to help you if you have a candidate you really want to get elected. We're happy to help make those connections if you don't have them already. The only caveat that I'm going to give you here is once you sign up for a campaign, do not switch candidates. Okay? If you have to get out of the race for personal reasons or what have you, fine, do that. But don't switch horses in the middle of the race. People have long memories. I've seen it happen. You can destroy all the good deeds you've done to that point. Strategy number 3, the RNC during the primary season. Now, I'll go back to my comment earlier. Many of us have every right to be disappointed in the RNC over the years in their failure to address health care in any meaningful way. And I got that. But I think that after the 3 or 4 years we've been spending trying to convince folks that doctors are there to help, that we can be organized, that we can speak with a voice, that we can read talking points, that we understand healthcare, I think they finally understand that we can bring something to the table. And I've been able to have meetings, many meetings, with RNC staff all the way from the bottom level to the top. So in meeting with the director of communications and his team, television, radio, media trainers, I'm convinced that they're ready to use us. So they have asked me to get them 6 doctors that can speak on the issue of healthcare reform, and they are all now in the database, in the RNC database. So 6 of our doctors are now there to speak on behalf of the RNC if they so choose, or when the RNC gets requests for doctors to appear on radio or television speaking as individual doctors, we've kind of pierced that bubble, so to speak, and we now have some influence there. So having said that, why would you want to get involved with the RNC? Well, real simple. If you don't have a candidate that you really like, that you feel really should be the President of the United States, more so than everybody else in the race, why not work with the RNC? Why not get involved with talking generalities about what conservatives and libertarians believe about healthcare reform? Why the doctor-patient relationship is so important. So it works really well for that. It's a great vehicle for that purpose. If you need to or prefer to remain neutral for whatever reason, for example, I'm a leader of doc squads. If I'm there to help my docs, our docs, get involved in primary campaigns, it doesn't look real good if I'm Jeb Bush's chief doctor or director of healthcare for his campaign. It just won't look good for me on his campaign, for example, or for doctors trusting me that I can have an open mind. So I'm totally neutral in the primaries, and that's something you need to do if you're going to run an organization effectively. Maybe you just like, ganging up on Hillary care or warning the public about what's going to happen if the Democrats continue to hold the White House. Perfectly good reason to do it too. And then in the long term, down the road, should we have the faith that the RNC is going to follow through and keep utilizing our doctors, you'll gain more influence in the organization for future reference. If you run for office one day, they'll know who you are. They might support you. You never know. Then strategy 4, which we're just going to touch on for just a second here, the general election. For those who have never been involved in a primary race and watch it go into a general, what happens is the primary candidate, the winner, their team, has to get together with the victory campaign or the RNC campaign. They have to get together and mesh. When they mesh properly, you win races. When they don't, it's a headache and you just generally don't win. So I believe that if we have some doctors over here in the winning presidential campaign or primary winner, and over here with RNC and victory campaigns in your states, we know each other, we trust each other, we've worked together before, we can put those together and make it happen in the general election. But we can't do that unless we start that now. And in the general, what are the people going to want from you? Well, they're always going to want the money, that's no question, but primarily, believe it or not, after the convention, they'll want us to go out and speak and be surrogate speaker for the candidates. If those of us who've chosen to be involved in a campaign do so, and recruit coalitions on behalf of whether it's a candidate, campaign, or another group. So having said that, I thank you very much again for allowing me to speak today. If you want to get in contact with me, I've given you 4 avenues to find me. I'm happy to talk about any of the issues that I brought up today. If you want to join Doc Squads and get involved, no cost to you at all. Just send your resume, we'll put you on the list, and as we secure more funding, we can assure you that we'll be calling you to get you active. So thank you very much again, and good luck with the rest of the conference.
Good morning, Dr. Strom. Judy Thompson here. How are you?
Hey, Judy. How you doing?
I'm well.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for an informative and instructional presentation at an important time in history. I don't know if you remember, I was in Washington, and as I left, I believe I picked up what might have been the last copy of your book that you had with you and carried it off. And as I read it, I was compelled to roll up my sleeves and go to work and start making contact with people. I still know who those people are. We've been busy since that time preparing the summit, but it was a very clear...
Oh, you guys have been very busy. Obviously very busy and very successful. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I guess one of the next steps moving forward will be to contact some of the local people involved in politics. Hey, I was wondering if you would tell us a little more about your comment, meshing with the victory campaign.
Sure. I learned that the hard way. It was a very hard lesson to learn. But you have a primary with many candidates, sometimes 2, sometimes in this case 16. But when the winner comes out, there's a candidate campaign. So let's say it's John Kasich. So John Kasich is now the nominee of the Republican Party. Well, he has a campaign that he's put together with a team and with, let's say, a healthcare coalition and other things like that. And then the RNC, through what they call the victory campaign, usually that's the name they assign to it, they provide a lot of the volunteers to get the vote out and do a lot of the so-called step work that you'd expect other people to do. And the campaign and the RNC have to mesh together. If they don't come together in harmony, and at least in some bit of harmony, it's really hard to take everybody's efforts and put them into one campaign, which really, at the end of the day, the general election is one campaign. So it's really an experience. You have to experience that to really understand. But you can imagine if you're there for Senator Paul and you've been there the whole time, and Senator Paul loses to to Mitt Romney or who have you, then the Mitt Romney people kind of take over everything, and you have to be able to sit back a little bit and say, okay, I got this, I understand. And if you want to be on the team, you got to kind of work with them. So that's kind of a summary of what I've experienced. And if I could be more specific, let me know. Specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So thank you. Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks again, Joel, for being with us here.
Sure.
Just want to ask your thoughts on this. Of course, you're approaching things from a political spectrum, and one of the things for our conference that we were concerned about, and I just like to get your thoughts on this, is in general, we tried to stay away from making political statements because our thought was, rightly or wrongly, that we're trying to unite people within the medical profession and not divide. And it occurred to us that, well, if you start making political statements within something like this, it can divide the house of medicine or the medical profession. And while I believe that, each of our politics define what kind of answers will come up to these issues, it's a concern from my standpoint, and I don't know, is that a concern or is it not? Is that?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a concern. And it took about 2 years in my head to figure out how to do this. I was really motivated by just getting physicians just to get involved and help to maybe teach them the ropes that I've learned the hard way. Because very few dentists or physicians, healthcare professionals get involved in campaigns at any leadership level at all. So my interest was to try to help people say, hey, here's how you can get involved, not to tell them who to vote for, not to divide them up into camps. It was just providing an educational experience to get involved. And it kind of morphed when we got our funding. It kind of morphed into this, if you want to write an article about healthcare in California or wherever you are, that the best way to do that would be to get some help in terms of a writer, and then someone will get you on television and radio, and you write that article as an individual doctor, not connected to any organization whatsoever, and that the voters would listen to that. And we kept the group together. In the beginning, it was all my money and all my time, like many of you have done. But as we got the grants, we had to really work at what are the principles that bring us together. And really, the main principle is the doctor-patient relationship has to be the supreme commandment here, that third-party payers, whether they're involved a little or a lot, we want to reduce that to whatever level we can. So we have found that even though many of our docs have gone to different primary campaigns, they still come back and they understand that we're doing this to help educate doctors and get them out there to say their piece.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that for me and our audience. I appreciate that.
Hi, Dr. Strom. This is Lisa Chu. This was a very eye-opening talk for me, and I'm really encouraged to hear that you're providing a path and a roadmap for physicians who just want to add their voice to the conversation. My question is about the being an effective messenger for these principles that you talked about. So what is your advice for a community physician who may have no direct desire to put themselves on a podium, but it actually is in contact with voters every day in the form of their patients? How does that doctor become a more effective messenger for his own profession, his or her own profession?
Well, first of all, yeah, recognizing that patients are voters indeed, and that your patients probably trust you more than almost anybody else, and also that you're still running a business. You know, actually putting out, you have to feel pretty strongly about introducing any kind of political message into your office. So that's a tough thing to do, and only a select few can or should do that, because, you know, you don't want to lose that professionalism that you have for your patients. We found that as long as we had doctors getting more and more involved and writing pieces and being on the radio, they became accustomed to it and comfortable, and their patients kind of respected them for putting their voice into this discussion, as long as they didn't get too political, like they weren't really ragging on the president. Okay, so I think the best thing to advise people in their communities is to get some practice. Call talk radio. Many of you already have done that already and written articles and successful doing that. So, you know, many of you already are prepared to do that. The local papers are phenomenal if they need copy. Many times your local papers are begging for copy. With our program, when we get our new funding, we hope pretty soon, we'll be able to have our professional writers and comms people able to help people out once again. So, I don't know if that answers your question exactly. Advocating within your practice for a political point of view. There are some docs in our group that do that, but they're in a pretty, you know, conservative neck of the woods.
Thank you.
So, Joel, I do use my patient visits as an opportunity for education. I also believe that I clarify to the patient that what we're going to do is share information, and they're going to make a choice for themselves about if they're going to use that information, and if so, which way to go. So I haven't really felt a political bias one way or the other. Earlier in your talk, you made a reference to lobbying, and I thought I heard you refer to using our voices for lobbying. And when I hear the term lobby, I think about money. So what are your thoughts about the difference between lobbying with your voice and lobbying with your dollars?
Well, very good. Lobbying with your dollars, you know, that's really simple. You give money, you know, you hope if you give enough or raise enough or do a fundraiser at your house, you know, you have a bigger voice. That's just the way that is. I've always found that distasteful. I've only done that in one campaign because I got tired of people telling me I couldn't raise money. But the lobbying part, the voice part, I found that the absolute best way to have your voice heard in a campaign is to have been involved with that campaign as, you know, Judith, who happens to be a doctor, as opposed to coming into that campaign as a representative of, you know, let my doctor practice or doc squads or anything else. Because that's how my quote-unquote career got started with politics in 1981. I wanted to reform the healthcare system, and one thing led to another. When I met Pete Wilson, and he wanted to reform healthcare. And they just had a trust in me because I was with Pete Wilson, I was one of the team, and I got a lot of input into the decision-making processes, including getting people on state boards and all. So the best thing you can do to get your lobby is really something that takes a little longer to develop a relationship with, and that's the best way. Being that we're a year and a half out from an election, and each of us has interest in certain elections. Wisconsin, for example, has a very tight Senate race coming up. You know, if you can help out that candidate, and I'm not proposing you write them a check and go away. I'm proposing that we can try to help you get into those campaigns and be a voice. So our group and your group and all the groups that we have can do a better job of that if we have bigger numbers. If we go into Ron Johnson's office, Senator Johnson's office, say we represent 1,000 physicians, and here's the number of people we've reached through op-eds and all that. And here's our practice profile, and these people are willing to go out on the hustings and talk for you. That's a much more effective way to have them listen to us, rather than going into Washington with 30 or 40 people and trying to get a hearing. As you guys who went understand, you almost always talk with the staffer, and the staffer gives you X amount of time, and if they don't agree with you, it's basically too bad. So without droning on too much, that's kind of what I wanted to say.
Well, we're down to our last few seconds here, actually, and I'll
Sure.
tell you that we have racked our brains on how to get bigger numbers, how to have physicians become interested. And in your presentation, you have given us some very clear, actionable items, also clarified in your book. So with that being said, thank you once again for joining us, and thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to seeing you at the next visit.